From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode 191. It is brought to you by our lovely sponsors, Squarespace, FreshBooks, and Storyworth. I'm your host, Stephen Hackett, and I am joined right across the table by Myke Hurley.
Surprise!
We're together. We give each other a high five. See, there's no way to fake that in the edit. You have to know we're together. And we're joined by a special guest. I don't want to say that all Mac Stories employees are interchangeable, because they're not. But we did trade Federico this week for the one and only John Voorhees.
Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
We have a new contractual agreement obligation clause for Federico that if he can't make it, John has to be here. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah. I felt a little uncomfortable signing in blood. I felt like that was... But, you know, he's Italian. They're very passionate people.
They are. And, you know, he had to take a little time off today, so here I am.
So we're recording in a hotel room that if you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you saw a picture of what I do when I move into a hotel room for a week. I set up a podcast studio.
Yep.
And cleaning people are always very concerned that I'm the FBI or ISIS or something. I don't know. Myke, I believe you have an opening statement.
Yeah, I do have an opening statement. So we're in Austin, Texas right now on my bachelor party, which, by the way, Stephen, thank you for arranging all of this.
You're welcome.
But I have a statement about this episode. I love podcasting. It is my career. It is the thing I've always wanted to do. In 8 years, I have never recorded a show against my will. This show is being recorded against my will.
We're just going to move right into follow-up. Just don't pay attention to that.
I love all of you listeners. I'm being held hostage. If you can hear this, please contact the local authorities.
He's actually tied to the desk. I can attest to that.
Stephen,
I also bring those supplies with me when I travel.
Into the schedule of our week. I proposed many ways for us to pre-record this episode. Stephen denied them all. So here we are.
Also doing Download Live this week and approximately 37 episodes of Subnet. So.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to start with some follow-up. And we talked last week about the pistol emoji and how not everyone was on board with changing it from a handgun to a water gun. Apple had led that charge or fight. I was trying to really avoid that phrase, but I just wandered right into it. Microsoft, right after we recorded, announced their new emoji set, or an updated emoji set that includes water pistols. So all the major OSs and emoji vendors, I guess, are on board with this change.
I remain to feel really sorry for Microsoft in all of this. Like,
really bad timing.
I just feel bad for them. They tried to get everybody to do this, like they tried to lead the charge on this with their ray gun. And then Apple just ruined them, like when they announced their new set and got rid of it all. But now
I think we could live in a world where we have a water gun and a ray gun. Because I liked the idea of having a ray gun emoji.
I miss the ray gun. Yeah, we have a few small vendors out there that are still doing the actual pistol. But it's all the major ones have switched over to a water gun now.
And I'd imagine they'll follow suit, right? Like if you have all the major ones doing it.
Well, it's like, Apple tend to just lead this in general, but I think that it is very important that emoji look consistent in some way. Like you can make them
at least in meaning
visually different, right? And it goes back to the again, this is all stuff we've spoken about before, but the what used to be the grinning emoji, like the kind of breathing through closed teeth, like that one, right?
Yeah.
It's, and that on different platforms that was seen in different ways. And I think just a new emoji was introduced to take that meaning, and then then grinning, Apple made it a big smile, and then they kind of just moved on from there. But like that, the interpretation of emoji is important. It's important for communication, and I'm pleased that there's a little bit more consistency now.
Same. So we also spoke last time about repair costs when dealing with iPhones and stuff, and we talked about AASPs, which are Apple Authorized Service Providers. And if you're not familiar with that, we kind of just blew past them last week. But what these companies are, and I used to manage one for several years, they have a official relationship with Apple. They get official Apple parts and can do repairs by technicians who go through the same training and testing that geniuses do. So it's not like Uncle Bob's iPhone repair stand on the side of the road.
Yep.
Like they're real people with real parts. Yep. And we sort of talked about, maybe pricing flexibility when it comes to iPhone repairs. And I got an email from somebody who manages an AASP now, And I thought it was really interesting because I've been out of that business for so long. It's obviously very different now. This person says they have less pricing flexibility than the Apple Store because the prices that Apple charges customers, like coming in for repairs, are basically the same prices that Apple charges the ASP for the parts and stuff. So like Apple can eat labor, and if you're an ASP and you eat a bunch of labor, you don't have a business anymore.
Yeah.
So they struggle to be competitive there. And they pay the same price in for mail-in Mac repairs that customers do. So, John, if you smash your MacBook Pro and send it to Apple's Repair Depot and they charge you $400, if you walk in ASP, they're paying Apple $400. So they may even pay you a markup for handling and, if they're going to back up your data or something. So it's a hard business to be in. Even when I was there, I think I left my ASP life in like 2010. Even then, it was hard to make a living. You had to really do it by having service contracts. Like I do all the repairs for a school or a lot of consulting. A lot of these places do mostly consulting and they do repairs on the side to keep the status.
It feels like this is only a business that can really exist in places that don't have Apple stores now, right?
Or or in really big cities that an Apple store is capacity.
Yeah.
So like in Memphis, we've had an Apple store. We had one of the first ones, store number 20, but at the time when I was in the business, we had 3 ASPs, and most of us were servicing school districts and private schools and stuff. But it's like as far as like a walk-in repair business, that's a really hard way to make a living.
Yeah, you really don't see very many of them. I mean, I would think it's pretty small, especially in terms of walk-in. But I would think enterprise and schools would be where that's at.
There's quite a lot in Europe, because Apple is not in a lot of European countries, even big cities. Like there is not an Apple store in Dublin yet. And there's quite a few ASPs in Dublin, which look just like Apple stores. It's so funny, and I get it. Like they design their stores to look like an Apple store, right?
You feel more confident walking in than if you're walking in like a place that's like the lights are flickering and there's a CCTV over the counter.
But yeah, so like I think in those places it makes a lot of sense to have an ASP because it's more than just repairs, right? Like they can sell iPhones, right? They can do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine the ASP business is very thriving in London, where we have like in some places in London you can't like trip over without falling into an Apple store.
Right, and if they are thriving, it's not because of the repair business. It's because they're consulting or doing deployments for schools or something else.
Or big businesses.
Yeah, right. School districts are businesses that maybe they're not Mac only, so they just outsource all the Mac stuff. Or they have schools especially, they have an IT department that's a certain size. But when they deploy 1,200 new MacBooks every 4 years, back when schools bought Macs, you need some extra horsepower. But ours went out of business. That company doesn't exist anymore, and I think it's just a hard way to go about it.
Did they predate the Apple Store completely? Like, were there ASPs before they were ever Apple stores?
Okay. They may have had a different name, but blessed Apple vendors go back to the Apple II days. In fact, the first one in Memphis, I actually know the owner. He was like the first Apple II dealer, I think, in Tennessee. I mean, way, way back.
Oh, wow.
So Apple has always had like officially blessed retail partners, and it just has evolved over the years to include service.
So did you say about like the fact that they can't even do iPhone screen repairs in some places?
Yeah. So the last point here was that most ASPs can't do iPhone screen repairs in their shops, and so. Because that requires some like calibration hardware,
special equipment, right,
and a bunch of stuff,
and it's only getting more complicated, right?
Yeah, and you have to do like the Touch ID authentication stuff, and so you see a lot of unofficial like non-ASP. Like we have one in town called iFix. I think they're a chain. They're not an ASP to my knowledge, but they're getting parts and they're figuring it out. My point is, and I think it goes to what this person said in their email, is that if you need an iPhone screen repair, an ASP is not going to be cheaper. They may not even be able to do it. So, like, I just tell people at this point, like, just go to the Apple Store. Because you're not going to pay. If you pay more, you're not going to pay that much more.
Yep.
It comes with its own repair warranty. That the Touch ID or all the hardware authentication that goes on is going to work. iOS 11.2 or whatever won't brick your phone.
Yeah, I was going to say there was that bug not too long ago.
Yeah. So it's, I think Apple stores where they exist have sucked all the air out of the room. Now, the problem is, like you said, is a really good point. Apple stores aren't everywhere. There are a lot of people, we know people who have to drive a couple hours to go to an Apple store, and Apple just can't be everywhere. And they're always opening new stores. Like if you look at that retail page, that list just gets longer and longer all the time.
All right, check out first break.
Let's do it.
All right, this episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at Squarespace. You can make your next move with Squarespace. They let you easily create a website for your next idea or project. And with the ability to grab a unique domain name, take advantage and customize award-winning beautiful templates, and so much more, they are the all-in-one place for any type of website you want to build. You want to create an online store, a portfolio, a blog, a site for your business, a site for your band. It doesn't matter what type of website you want to make. They have all of the tools that you need to get started. There's nothing to install, patch, or upgrade. They've got all of that stuff covered for you. And they've got your back 24/7 with customer support. It's award-winning customer support. If you need anything with Squarespace, they will be there to answer the questions and get you the help that you want. I've used Squarespace so many times over the years. Every new website that I want to build, I go to Squarespace first because I know how to use it and because it's simple to use, and they can give me things that I can't do on my own because I don't know how to build a website, but I know how to work with Squarespace because it's simple. What you see is what you get. It's easy to customize. It's easy to make it feel like your own thing. Their plans start at just $12 a month. You can sign up for a free trial today with no credit card required. Just go to squarespace.com/connected. Then when you decide to sign up after you've played around and tried it out, use the code CONNECTED to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain and to show your support for this show. Once again, that's squarespace.com/connected and the code CONNECTED to get 10% off your first purchase. Our thanks to Squarespace for their support of this show and Relay FM. Squarespace. Make your next move, make your next website.
So let's talk about the most rumored iPhone of all time, the iPhone SE2. I think we talked about the iPhone 10 like a year in advance. Some stuff was coming out. The iPhone SE2 continues to be in the news. And so I had said a couple weeks ago that I believe that it will have a metal back. It's going to be basically the same because the idea of the SE is that it's cheap and easy to build, and Apple could churn them out at this point. There's a new rumor that the iPhone...
There's always a new rumor.
There's always a new rumor. As I said, it's the most rumored iPhone of all time. An updated iPhone SE shipping this month in May, potentially, and that it is believed it will continue to have Touch ID with no headphone jack, which would be surprising to me because, again, it already has a headphone jack, change as little as possible, but it says no headphone jack, and it says that it would have the A10 Fusion chip, which we heard before, but to my chagrin, the inclusion potentially of a glass back to introduce wireless charging.
Who would have said that?
We can't say Myke was right because it's a rumor. Myke was rumored to be right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Myke is maybe going to be right.
That's not as catchy.
Stand by
to be honest,
both
it's
of
not
those
as catchy.
things. The removal of the headphone jack and the inclusion of wireless charging makes sense to me because every time Apple releases a product that has stuff that doesn't exist on a previous phone or now exists on a new phone, it just seems weird, right? It's like them releasing a new product that didn't have Touch ID when Touch ID became a thing.
Right, it makes that product feel old instantly.
Exactly. So whilst I don't think that this thing will have Face ID because Face ID isn't everywhere yet, it's on just
and it's
one
very expensive.
product. Yeah,
There's a lot of hardware involved with that.
That I think you can move away from that, but I really think that putting wireless charging into this and removing the headphone jack, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Sure.
Yeah, and maybe they'd release it with the AirPower mat. Maybe we'll see that someday with an SE2, one back-to-back press releases.
Remember when they introduced that 18 years ago?
18 years ago, last June. Boy,
but it's not late, though, remember?
Oh, God.
It's not late.
No. Get off the
It's not late.
Get off the
Because,
it's only 23 months.
Even though everyone that says
11
this is Apple put some stuff up in the ads, right? There were these ads that said
early 2018.
Yeah. That thing, it's delayed at this point, right? I know, it's not delayed today. You wouldn't announce it in September
if you knew it was going to be.
If
May.
you knew that,
Agreed.
May passes and it still hasn't arrived
because it hasn't. I didn't plan on talking this, but it's not like the AirPower off in the distance has killed the charging base market now. We all have wireless chargers,
Yep.
and maybe someone's out there holding off, just counting their pennies for an AirPower and not buying a Mophie base. But the Mophie stuff and all these other ones are good. We all have them, right? We're all using wireless charging, and Myke doesn't like it, but everyone else does.
Adina has mine. She uses it.
Yeah,
she loves it. She did have this thing the other day though, where we were in bed, and she was like, "My phone's gonna die, and I want to read on it. I don't know what to do."
You have to hold the wireless charger.
She was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, haha. And I just put mine in the little dock again.
Well,
like,
yeah. Well, you use a dock, so you couldn't do it either. Like, you're holding a dock.
Well, but I have a lightning cable plugged in for my iPad.
Yeah.
Just like the really, really
Yeah.
ridiculously long one. That like huge one.
I've got one running up through the couch cushions in my living room. It's like the best thing you can do in a house is to have a long lightning cable in a sofa. So yeah, back to the SE2. Like I see what you're saying, and I think both of our points are valid. Just to see which way Apple goes.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. If they release a phone that is aluminum backed again, so it doesn't have wireless charging, it has a headphone jack when like nothing else does, except the 7 and 6S that you can still buy. Like,
but it's new product.
It's a new product, and so it does. What a glass back and no headphone jack does is it makes it feel more premium and newer than it actually is.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing at all, because by all indications, the SE sold pretty well. Like, I mean, I know, I think it really surprised analysts and people who watch this stuff. We're going to talk more about them later. How well it does. Out in the world, you see them.
Yep.
And especially in other markets, it does really well because it's so much cheaper. So I think it's a valuable product. I hope they release a new one. And I mean, it'd be great. Like, it'd be great if it had wireless charging and no headphone jack. Like, I think about the SE in my household. My spouse has one. And like, it'd be great to have wireless charging. I could put one of those things in the kitchen or somewhere and get rid of the long lightning cable we have. It's always in the way. And she already uses Beats X, so she doesn't really care about the headphone jack. Like, I don't have any say against it. I just think that the cost thing is an overriding factor in my mind.
For me, it's not so much what I necessarily think they will do. It's more what I think is they should do, which is the right decision. I think, which is to move the product forward a little bit, like not to make it bezel-less with Face ID. Like, I still think it's going to have Touch ID.
It's still an SE, right? It's still that form factor, more or less.
But I think that there are some steps you can take to put some new stuff into this, especially if this is a product you're only going to rev every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Like,
get it far down the road.
Something every time for those people, because it is kind of, I've heard this from some listeners, especially, as like we're talking more about what this year's phones will be, and it's like 3 new phones, all bigger, right? Like, they're all getting bigger. Like, it is a shame for people that, for whatever reason, want the small phone or need the small phone. Yeah, that like they just get this consistently older phone all the time.
And I think out of maybe the iPhone 10 is maybe the best example, but like iPhone SE fans are like, they are fans of that phone.
I feel like you've got to, if you love that phone, you feel like you've got to hold on to it and love it, right?
Because you never know what's going to happen.
The business is moving away from you.
It's like the Mac Mini fans. They're all under their beds crying.
Yeah, it's like a devout thing, right? Like, you love that. You want, because you're in the minority. You're bucking against the trend. Right. So like, you feel like you've got to be very vocal about it.
I mean, there have been times over the last couple of years, especially when I carried a Plus phone, like every once in a while I was like, I should buy an SE. Like, I don't know, it just like popped in my head sometimes because like there's something, there is something kind of attractive about it. But
yeah, the other thing is, look, we're halfway through the cycle, right? We're halfway through 2018 with the new phones that have wireless charging and don't have the headphone jack. So if the SE doesn't come out till later this year, and then we have new phones in September, that thing, if it's metal backed, is just going to look older and more dated much more quickly, I think.
Yeah. Yes, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Myke, you say that you're impressed with your HomePod hardware. I don't know why this is a thing all of a sudden.
So just like in the last couple of weeks, I've just started to notice some stuff about the HomePod that I've been very impressed with. It still has a bunch of frustrations. Like the HomePod misfires way more than any other device.
Yes.
It's like the Echo does, right? Like every now and then the Echo will just be like, what are you saying? Or like, oh, resuming Spotify. Like, it will just do it.
Yeah.
But the HomePod does it way more, and like the reason for that is because it isn't doing any kind of like trying to detect who the voices are. Like very frequently I'll be watching a YouTube video and someone says like the Ahoy telephone phrase, and the HomePod will go like in a way that like I watch a bunch. So like there's like a TV show that we watch where one of the characters' names is the Alexa word. And it doesn't go off. Our Echo does not go off because I assume it's doing something to try and figure out who the voices are. But my HomePod triggers all the time. But anyway, so that's just to say, like, yes, it does have its problems. But those microphones in that thing are incredible. So like I've been like kind of testing it, like listening to loud music and just being like very quietly just saying like, "Oh, hi telephone, pause," and it does it.
Yeah.
And my Echo, if there is any kind of white noise, like if we have the extractor fan going over the hob, that thing, like you have to scream at it. But the HomePod, like, it is unbelievable how well it can hear you.
Yeah, it's bananas. I actually, the other day, I have my HomePod up in our living room on the first floor of our house, and I was working down in the basement, which is like down a set of stairs around the corner, and I was facing a wall, and I was trying to use Ahoy telephone with my telephone, and it set off the HomePod on the first floor. I was amazed, really.
I mean, so that is a good and bad.
Yes,
right, because it's amazing that it did that, but then there is the bad, and like it can't always take the HomePod. I think also does need to be better at like understanding what requests it can take, especially again, come back to this point, because it can't do everything the phone can do. But you know, my overall point is that like the hardware is incredible, and like it sounds so good.
Yeah, the music on that thing is just amazing to me. And what I appreciate is that it sounds fantastic from really low volumes all the way up to loud, which is, you can set that. I'll often, if everybody's in bed still and I'm up early in the morning, I'll set it at like 15, which is really quiet. But because it's such good, the speakers are so good, there's still a lot of definition in the music and you can hear it very well.
When you're setting the volume, what are you asking for? Because I can't seem to give it the command it wants a lot of the time. What do you say, like 15%?
I just say 15 most of the time, or 20.
See, we struggle with this, but like sometimes like, oh, hey, turn the volume down, and it turns it down by like a minuscule amount, right? It's like where the Echo seems to have like a scale of like 1 to 10.
The HomePod's like 1 to 100.
Yeah, and it's like asking it to just say turn it up, turn it down seems to never give it what I want. Like we have to give it like an incremental percentage.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm never really sure. Like I'm like, turn it down 10%. I was like, no, I can't hear anything. But
right.
yeah, it's like I'm not 100% sure what the phrasing is. And this is the problem with trying to run and maintain multiple devices, that they have different vernacular that you use, and it can be really tricky. Like it wants, the Echo wants it in this way, and the HomePod wants it in this way, and trying to remember which one is which can sometimes
I've
be a
noticed
pain.
that when I talk to my Echo, I say, "Hey, Echo name," like because I'm used to saying,
I also
"Hey,
don't
Ahoy
like
telephone."
the "hey" better. Like it's too.
Hey.
I know it's the same amount of syllables as what I call the Echo, but it feels more awkward.
Hey, Sierra. The thing I've really noticed about the HomePod, so mine got demoted out of our kitchen. The Echo is back in the kitchen. The HomePod's in my office. And two things that really stand out at me. One is what you already touched on, that it doesn't always do a great job. So like one thing I do very often, I have my phone in my hand, I walk in my office, and I've got a HomeKit scene set up to turn the lights on my desk and the lights on some shelving in my office. I like those on when I work. And so I'll say, Ahoy telephone, and the name of the scene is Studio On. So all you have to say is Ahoy telephone, Studio On. And most of the time the HomePod picks it up. But sometimes my iPhone does because it's in my hand and the screen's on because it's been moved or something. And it would be nice to have an option, I think, to have the HomePod have a different wake word. So I can direct something just to it. The other thing, and I think I talked about this when it first came out, and it annoys me to this day, is that if you touch the top of it and nothing's going on, it starts playing music.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I mean, you brush it, and I don't mind that, but like put it behind a double tap or something, because at least where mine is, I can come in contact with it accidentally.
I would like
and then,
buttons. I don't know why it needs to be a touch-sensitive surface when it actually doesn't do anything.
Because Johnny Ive hates.
I do like the little animation that it makes, but it would be nice if it could have that animation, but have play, pause, physical buttons.
Yeah.
I would prefer that.
That's one thing that's really nice about the Echo, is that I can put my hand on it. I know what it's doing.
Yep.
But like, or just again, give me the option to disable that, because I set it off pretty often, and if you had the music playing loudly last time, the music starts playing loudly, and it can be surprising.
Yeah.
But I will say overall, like over time, I am more impressed rather than less impressed, because the things that I'm not impressed with, I just don't do those on it, right? Like I stopped trying to do X, Y, and Z on it, or like stopped getting like particularly frustrated with the thing that it does. Like some of the frustrations that I have of it are just, they are like conceptual frustrations because they're not things I use. Like I don't use SiriKit stuff. I never ask my iPhone, I never ask Siri to do anything anyway. So the fact that the HomePod can't do it doesn't bother me.
I've started to use the Sirican integrations for things like reminders or adding to things because my HomePod's sitting in my living room kitchen, and usually when I'm in there, I'm making a meal or I'm doing something that's not sitting at a Mac or using an iOS device. So if I think of something, oftentimes I will use it for that, and it got a lot better with 11.3.
Adina was telling me a story, which I was very proud of her. She had like the early adopters dilemma of you're in a conversation with people. And it was two friends, like two work colleagues, were talking about how bad the Echo is. They're like, oh, it doesn't do anything. Like, it's rubbish. All I can do is just order stuff on Amazon with it. Like, it doesn't do anything. And then Adina's like, well, she's like, I tell you what I'll do every day. I ask it for the time when I'm getting ready, so I know what the time is. I ask it for the weather every day. We turn our lights on and off with it. We order our groceries with it because it plugs into our grocery delivery service. I will set timers for it. I do unit conversion. It's like, I'm so proud of you. Like, she's like, no, because she really loves it. Like, yeah. I'm actually thinking about getting a Spot, because our Echo, the second generation Echo, I think our one is broken. I don't think, because it very infrequently can hear me, and it very frequently fails. And we have three Echo devices in our home now, and the Dot and the first gen Echo have no problem, but the second gen Echo in the kitchen, and we moved it to the bedroom, and it's always consistently struggling.
Huh? Yeah, mine doesn't do that. It sounds like you got one.
I think we have a bum one. So I've been thinking about contacting Amazon and doing whatever. Like, that's on my list to do. But I've also been I've seen some ads for the Spot recently.
I like it a lot.
What do you like about it?
I just like the size. It's like it's a nice little globe that sits on my desk, and when I'm not using it, I've still got the time with a nice wallpaper on it, and I can see headlines come through during the day and the weather and the time.
This is what I was thinking, right? Because this is like in the morning, Adina wants to know the weather and she wants to know the time and she's getting ready, and this would stop her from actually having to ask because it would be present on it.
It's perfect for that.
I'm thinking about getting one. It looks good as like a little alarm clocky type thing.
It's very much that. It's good for, I would think it'd be good for a bedside type of clock.
Which is what we would do.
Or a desk, which is what I use it for, or even in a kitchen next to your phone or something,
Yeah, and then also, like, I was originally, every time I think about it, I'm like, oh, but it has a camera. But then I have to remind myself that there are like 7 cameras in our bedroom because of all of our phones and iPads. And it's like whatever. Like, it is what it is.
It has a camera, and I've never used it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to use it.
Right, it's there. I mean, I suppose
I could put a little piece of tape on it if I want to. Like, if because we're never gonna video call anyone, because I think that's dumb with the Echo. But it's kind of in my to purchase list, I think, because it just looks like a nice little product, I think.
Yeah. So moving on a little bit, this happened last week, but I wanted to touch on it just for a second. That Apple officially discontinued its airport line. This was a report from Mark Gurman back
November 2016.
I don't want to talk about November 2016.
Yeah,
but,
the dark time.
The dark time. But it's not a political comment. We're talking about just airports, people. Don't email me. But Apple officially acknowledges in press outlets that they have discontinued the airport line. They're selling off the inventory they have. So no more Airport Express, Extreme, or Time Capsule. And I gotta say, I'm disappointed. I'm not surprised, right? Like, those are different feelings, but I am disappointed for a couple of reasons. One, you guys spoke about this on Upgrade. Both the Express and the Time Capsule do things that are difficult to pull off otherwise, where you have a little wireless thing and you can stream music from iTunes or from an iOS device to it, and has an aux jack, so you can plug it into your stereo system. I know several people who have used that over the years, and again, it's something probably like the SE that it's not a huge deal, but people who have built a system around it really care. Mm-hmm. But I think the bigger disappointment is the Time Capsule, that having a thing that was your wireless router and wireless backup was great. Especially, most people have notebooks. We are I think all 3 of us have desktops as well. Those are our primary Macs, but that's different than most people. And you just have a house full of laptops backing up to a thing in the closet is pretty great. You can do that still. So High Sierra introduced, it basically brought Time Machine Server from macOS Server, which is also dead, to macOS Client, where you can plug a big drive into a Mac Mini or something. Remember when they made those? This the further I go down this is
a trend here.
more dead,
just bad,
more dead hardware, and you can share that disk with Time Machine users in the house. But those things I think performed important functions in the Apple ecosystem, and most importantly, I think there were a lot of people who could understand the airport software and like how it worked, because it really was like a good example of like Apple taking something complex and making it simple enough, and you could still do like complex things on it if you wanted to.
Right.
But like if you just want to set up a wireless password and like have a guest access, it was really easy. And I got to know, there are other products that do a good job of that. But if you're going to replace it with like a Netgear or a Linksys or something, those interfaces are confusing, and you can set something up wrong and not really know why. Like the airport would even give you warnings. Like if you turned off DHCP or you had double NAT or something, it would tell you, hey, this configuration is going to act up in this way, and it would walk you through resolving it. And very few products do that, and so I understand why they did it.
This just isn't a business they should be in anymore. Like,
I disagree. I think they should. I think their customers benefit from this sort of hardware being available.
I'll repeat what I said on Upgrade, but if Apple want to continue in this business, they have to build a mesh product, because that's where the business is now.
Right.
And I just think that is a distraction and a waste of time for them to do, because there are good products that exist. Okay, Eero is a sponsor, but there are more than that. There's Orbi and Google Wi-Fi and stuff. Like these products all exist. I just think that considering everything else Apple has to do, considering how much we complain about all of the things they're not focusing on, don't put focus into this as well. Right, just in talking about that, you were talking about your frustrations about the Mac Mini. The Mac Mini is more important to have engineers on than to spend any time building a mesh Wi-Fi product.
But those aren't the same engineering teams.
No, but just to put any resources and focus on something.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a conversation we don't have to have today. But again, it's stupid that Apple can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Well, but we know they can't. So, I feel like it's at this point, it feels almost pointless to me to say but they should be able to, because we have to just accept at this point that they are a company who has the capacity for only limited focus.
Yeah, right. And in that world where that is true, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon, then you're right that they should focus on things that are more important. An interesting side effect of this is all these other companies you mentioned. They have a bunch of Apple people in them, and it's showing in their products and the way they're laid out. So one thing this has done, starting 2 years ago, whenever that announcement came out, is that these other products have gotten better, but people, this is something people don't buy very often, and so by the time your time capsule dies in 2 years, maybe there'll be something out there. What this does do, I think, it shows Eero or Linksys or whoever build a product that duplicates these things, because clearly there was a market for it, because Apple was in this business. Product? Yeah, because Apple was in this business for over a decade, and the time capsule in particular, so many people use that thing, and now you can do it, but you got to be a lot nerdier to do it.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out too, though, that you can transition away from the Apple products to something else and still use them kind of in a mixed environment. Yeah. Because I last summer set up an Orbi network at my house, and I still have a time capsule hanging off of it, and an Airport Express, which is using doing the music for our back patio. So I've got those integrated into that Orbi system, and it works just fine. Now since Apple's not making those products anymore, eventually those will die. But I've had those each, I think, 2 or 3 years, so I'm hoping I'll get at least another year or two out of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have some important news.
Oh, okay.
I have bought the first piece of my gaming PC.
What did you buy?
GPU?
I bought a motherboard.
Okay.
So a friend of mine, an amazing YouTuber, Austin Evans, has been helping me with some parts. Because he did a YouTube video a couple of weeks ago about building a streaming PC, and I'm like, Austin, you made this video for me. It's exactly what I want. But I didn't like the case, because the case was way too gaming PC for me.
I watched that video. That case was insane.
Yeah. So I asked him for some suggestions of some other cases, and so he's made some suggestions, and I was looking through the parts, and one of the motherboard is back ordered. So I decided to order that.
Oh, okay.
And that's going to be coming from the US, and it'll arrive sometime in mid-May. And then when I get back, I'm going to start slowly assembling all of the other pieces that I need. I'm going with the AMD Ryzen line.
Okay.
because it seems like it's really powerful stuff.
That's what we did when we built one around
And
Christmas
you're happy
time.
with it?
Yeah, very happy with
Okay.
it. But I'll tell you, it was frustrating building that thing.
Why?
It just didn't work when we put it together. We
Yeah,
ended up,
I'm
we ended up
expecting a
hiring,
lot of that.
We ended up hiring someone to figure out what we didn't get right because it just wouldn't work.
YouTube videos, they autoplay. Yeah, I am expecting to have lots of problems.
Yeah, but it's a good PC now
Yeah.
that it actually works.
I'm expecting to get very frustrated with it, and I'm going to watch lots of YouTube videos and read loads of articles, but I do really I want to build it. I want to build it because I think it'll be fun. I've never done that kind of thing before, so that's what I want to do.
And it's what you got to do if you want to play some of those games that you want to play, like PUBG and Fortnite.
Yeah, I mean, I could buy an Alienware, right, and it would get me there, but
Right.
and then I could also upgrade it. But I want to actually just see if I'm able to piece it, and I'm sure I'm going to break something really expensive. But like, hey ho, you live and learn.
Yeah, I don't really have a need for a PC, but like every 6 months, I'm like, I just want to build one.
Yeah.
Like I have those skills, and I haven't used them in a long time. But I think you're gonna be happy with that. It seems like AMD is doing a really good job. They just revved all those processors
Yeah,
like 2
right.
weeks ago. And I mean, the Ryzen stuff is really, at certain price points, very competitive with Intel, and that's exciting because that was not the case for a really long time.
No, so I'm gonna give it a go. I reckon before WWDC I will have done it.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Are you gonna
Nice.
do a video? Are you gonna show it off once it's done?
Maybe.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, maybe. Probably do something.
Well, that's exciting, man. I know you talked about that a long time. I'm glad you're
I
doing
know.
it.
I'm fine. Well, it's because I've started doing more streaming.
I mean, the Mac's dead, so you might as well build a PC. Right? That's what
figure.
everybody on Twitter
I'm
says.
transitioning to Windows and Android.
Start looking for the GPU now because with the Bitcoin miners, the prices on those things are really high sometimes.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the next thing that I buy. Will be the GPU,
Yeah.
and then just slowly buy everything else.
I'll start carving out an organ now.
I'm gonna get one of those crazy like Razer keyboards with all the LEDs in it, though.
Are you
You're
really?
gonna cripple your hands.
Right, because the
your
thing
hands are done.
yeah, the thing is,
What do you?
because I'm not going to play on keyboard
Fill
and
the
mouse.
listeners in. What do you type on right now?
The Microsoft Sculpt.
Oh, yeah, I'm
ergonomic
sure
keyboard.
mechanical LED.
But the thing is, like, it will purely be just for decoration and launching games. Because I'm gonna buy an Xbox controller. Like, I
Sure.
am not a keyboard and mouse game player. Like, that is not.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I just don't have those skills.
Right.
But I want to buy some stuff which is dumb gaming PC stuff.
Yeah.
Like the fan that I'm buying has an LED in it. Like, which,
I was
you
gonna-
know,
I was gonna say,
want to
like-
have some little hints of it, you know,
I
but
was gonna
not,
say
not too
how
much.
LED you're gonna go.
I want it. So when the Razer one, they do like a rainbow one. I
Yeah.
want to get that one.
Yeah. What's that strange glow coming from Mike's house?
Did you see it?
It's his PC.
Yeah, it's you know the episode of Seinfeld where the chicken place opens across the street and Kramer opens his door
Yep,
and the red
and, like,
light. That's what's
bounces
going to be
backward.
like outside Mike's door. Like you open up, it's just rainbow light just streaming into the hallway. We've been talking for 37 minutes that have not moved any real topics yet. We've done some mini topics. You want to tell us about our next sponsor?
FreshBooks, if you are running your own company, if you have a small business, you know how important it is to make smart decisions. There is no smarter decision than using FreshBooks. They can save you so much time, so much hassle, so much aggravation when it comes to getting paid, tracking your time, tracking your expenses. FreshBooks can do all of it. They simplify all of these tasks for you, and they drastically will reduce the amount of time that it will take for you to deal with your paperwork. And they do this for their over 10 million customers. I can't speak highly enough about FreshBooks. It is one of my very, very favorite things that I use. I use FreshBooks weekly. So does Steven. We're both always sending invoices and expenses and all that kind of stuff. I love these things. I talk about them every single time, but it's because they're so useful. Having the ability to be able to actually see if someone has received, looked at, and done anything with your invoice, it just saves so much aggravation. You don't have to be sending those emails where you're like, hey, just want to check if you got this. Like that, no one wants to receive those emails. No one wants to send those emails. Just being able to keep on track, like to be able to keep track of it and to keep on top of everything, it just saves so much hassle from being able to run your business on a day-to-day basis. If you ever send invoices to people, no matter how many you send, and you haven't tried out FreshBooks yet, you really, really should. And it's easy to do. They offer a 30-day free trial. All you need to do is go to freshbooks.com/connected and you can sign up. You don't need to put any credit card information in. You can just go in and try it out for yourself for 30 days. And then when you do decide to sign up, because you will, because it's awesome, when they say, how did you hear about us? Tell them that you heard about them from this show, and that will help support us as well. Our thanks to FreshBooks for their continued support of this show and Relay FM.
So yesterday on May 1st, Apple had its Q2 earnings report come out. And spoiler alert, guys, they're still in business.
Really?
I know. I really
Whoa,
thought...
Hang on a second.
I really thought
No
they were
way.
doomed.
Didn't Wired just do like that Prey cover? Wasn't that just like just a couple of weeks ago or something?
So I'm going to blast through some numbers real quick and we can see what's interesting they were talking about. $61.1 billion in revenue. It's a record for Q2, up from $52.9 a year ago. $9.19 billion in services, up from $7 billion. That just keeps on going.
And it's only going to keep on going.
Yeah,
because
it's Apple Music, it's iCloud storage.
it will be
stuff.
Apple Television.
Eventually. Yep, it'll be video soon.
Yep.
Like this is the thing for multiple reasons. One, because it's money from your existing customers and it's monthly recurring money from your existing customers. So it only in theory ever goes up,
Right.
because it just keeps going and you add more people and it just keeps going up. And also, Apple are putting so much focus into it because it's the only part of their business right now and for the foreseeable future that will see increased, huge growth.
They can't double the number of iPhones sold, but they could
No.
double their service
and they
revenue.
will. And they will continue to do that for some time, I think.
Other products. So this includes Apple Watch, HomePod, iPod socks, all that
All
stuff.
those well-selling products.
$3.5 billion, up from $2.8. That's not the highest it's ever been, but the Apple Watch always does really well for the holidays. But clearly, those products are selling well.
It is worth noting HomePod was not mentioned in any way.
But they don't mention the Apple
No,
Watch.
but, like,
it's not surprising.
They didn't even mention that
That it
HomePod's
exists.
doing really good.
Yeah, because it's not.
They just didn't
That's
talk
not what it
about
is.
They really didn't say anything. That's right.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that I read in Jason's Macworld article. He was like, you would expect them to at least say something like, we're really pleased with how HomePod has been selling. Like, they'll always throw something in for a new product. They didn't even say, they said nothing.
Yeah, because they say like the Apple Watch is selling at twice the rate it used to
it's
one
like,
time.
This is the
Bezos
biggest
charted.
quarter of all time for it, or like they're like, oh, we haven't even been able to keep them from flying off the shelves or whatever, but
Yeah.
no, nothing about the HomePod.
Yeah,
which doesn't mean it's a disaster, but it is notable
It's not
that it wasn't called
they
out
didn't
in
throw a
any
parade
way.
for it.
Yeah,
9.1 million iPads sold, up from 8.9. And that's with no new. The only new thing is that 9.7, and that was pretty late in the quarter.
Late. Yeah, very late.
So, iPad Pros and stuff have been the same for a while. It's pretty good.
I'm just continue to be very pleased about this. The turnaround has happened.
Macs were basically flat. They were down a little bit, 4.1 million to 4.2, with no new products since last year. So, right? Hasn't been anything
I
this
think
year.
that's right.
So, but the big number, of course, is the number of iPhones. And again, there was some discussion about the iPhone 10 not selling as well. 52.2 million iPhones sold in the quarter, up from 50.8. Tim Cook said on the call that the iPhone 10 is the best-selling phone right now and has been every week since it debuted. And this is even a statement going back. Do you remember last quarter there was that report that the 8 or maybe even like the 7 was like the best-selling phone, right? That the new phones
Right.
weren't. That's Apple continuing to address that narrative. It is worth noticing that the ASP, so the average selling price of the phone, slipped a little bit. So it may be, I was talking to Jason about this last night, his idea, and I think it's probably accurate, is that the iPhone 10 had a lot of pent-up demand, right? Because all the nerds wanted it. That's a very large user base of people who always want the newest thing. And those people, painting with a broad stroke, buy early, right? And so the iPhone 10 had a really big, out of the gate, and they've ramped up production. Now they're slowing that down a little bit, which is where that report comes from. So it may be that the 8 and 8 Plus and the 10 are sort of balancing out somehow. The 10 is still the best-selling phone,
Right.
but maybe that gap is a little smaller.
Different mix, basically.
But it's still good news for the iPhone 10, and it's Apple addressing that head on, that the 10 is still selling better than anything else. And I want to, before we get back into this, I was just curious about the two of you, out in the world, I feel like I see a lot of iPhone 10s. I see a ton of 8s. I think a lot of people went from the 6 or 6S to the 8. I think the 8 is doing
I think
very
it's
well.
hard for me. I mean, I don't see 8s. I mean, I don't know if I'm seeing 8s.
That's true.
It is
right?
hard to tell.
Because people put
Yeah.
them in cases, so it's hard to see.
They look the same.
But I see a lot of 10s in London. It is a lot of my friends have them. I feel like this is obviously incredibly anecdotal, but more people in my life bought the 10 than they would have bought an 8. In the sense, going back previous years, it feels like a lot of people that I know upgraded. A lot of people upgraded to that phone in a way that they may not have necessarily upgraded in previous years.
I feel like initially I didn't see a lot of 10s. I knew a lot of people who had them, and people like you guys had the 10. But when I was out on the street, I didn't see a lot of them initially, but I've seen a lot more in the last quarter or so. I mean, and again, very anecdotal, but I feel like we had that bump of the early adopters, and then they started to catch on as people started getting familiar with what it does and starting to upgrade their phones around the holiday quarter and so forth.
Super off topic, but I love my iPhone 10 so much.
Oh, I do too.
The battery is so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
I landed in Austin with 55% battery life.
That's pretty crazy. You were on
How?
the flight forever.
It's a 10-hour flight. I was traveling in the morning and doing everything and doing all the stuff that you do when you travel.
Instagram stories mostly.
Instagram stories.
Your
And
suitcase.
then I had it like on airplane mode when I was flying, and I landed with 55% battery life.
It's really good, and I've been happy with the hardware. It's been funny to compare because they're a bunch of nerds together this week, and like everyone's iPhone 10 is all scratched up. You can tell who doesn't use a case, mostly me. And you can see how they age, and it's interesting to see that. Like I don't see many of the black ones. Like I feel like the silver,
The brown one.
yeah, I don't like the black.
I don't like the black. It's really strange in certain
It's
lights.
not saturated enough for me, and maybe that's because
Yeah.
I had the matte black iPhone 7 Plus, which is still my favorite iPhone finish to date. Like I loved the way that phone looked, but the iPhone 10 is still doing well, and I think that's I think Apple really wants to drive that home that this isn't a mistake, And we talked about it when the iPhone 10 was first announced. About part of it feels like, what is the ceiling for an iPhone price point? And maybe the 10 is it. I think it probably is.
No, it's not, man.
Do you think it go higher?
Well, the plus one will be more expensive.
It will. It'll probably be like $1,400.
But like, here's the thing, right? So there's this whole. I'm very confused about a lot of the analyst reporting at the moment because all analysts seem really set on specific things, and then Apple is saying no, it's not the case when it comes to the results.
Right.
And I can't get my head around who is right and who is wrong. Like I'm really struggling with this because all analysts in the last quarter and this quarter leading up to it are like, the iPhone 10 is not selling, it's not selling well, it's selling worse than other phones, and then Apple are like, nope, it's the best one. And they said like they've never had the most expensive phone be the top seller before, and it is, and they're selling more of them. And then analysts are saying that the next quarter is going to be bad, but then Apple forecasted year-on-year revenue growth. Like they forecasted 51 to 53.5 billion in revenue. Q3 2017 was 52.9. So it might be a little bit under, it might be higher. Like they're gonna keep, it is gonna keep growing, basically, right?
Yeah, I think part of that is the fact that these small tidbits of information come out from the supply chain, like the fact that component orders were down, and suddenly component orders being down aren't necessarily something that's typical in the business. It becomes a bigger story. It gets overblown very easily by a lot of the analysts, and that becomes the narrative until we get to the point where Apple can correct the narrative.
I misspoke there quickly. I don't want to correct myself. Q3 guidance is 51 to 53 billion. Q3 2017 was 45, so it's significantly more.
Right? Yeah, they aim low because if you miss that, then
it's still like a significant increase, 45 to 51, right? Like it's big in that quarter, which is a kind of weird quarter, right? Because this is it, right? Like the analysts are saying going into this, there were all these reports of, the iPhone's selling really bad leading up to June.
Yeah.
But how can it be? It can't be, right?
No, it can't
If
be.
the unit sales are still up, maybe not massive, but still up, and they're still forecasting, because they can only grow in revenue if the iPhone's selling well, because that's what drives the revenue. So like, what it just feels like is, for some reason, everyone wants it to fail, and that they find any news and they say, oh, that must be it. Because, as you said, there's these component reports, right? And Luca addressed it. He was like, yes, we've like basically done some stuff with some inventory, but it's going to come out in the wash.
Right.
And it's just so interesting to me right now that there is all this reporting again about the fact that the iPhone 10 is doing really badly, and then Apple keeps saying, well, you're like, LOL, you were wrong.
Right.
And it's just, I'm really struggling to kind of understand why it's happening. Like, why are people looking for this?
Well, and I don't want to get off on the crazy train of what this conversation could go, but there's very little punishment or risk for an analyst being wrong about this sort of thing, really.
But if
they
right,
get it right, then they're rock stars. And so if you break the story that the iPhone 10 is going to be selling behind the 8, and then Apple confirms that, then you're an analyst god. But if you're wrong about it, people forget. And
it's a more exciting story to write. I mean, look, because you can look at the reports of components being, like, orders going down, and it's very easy to draw that line to, like, well, they must not be selling as many iPhones. But they seem to be so sure of it, right? Like, oh no, this is definitely it. We've done all of our surveys from something, and no one's buying it. And it just seems so interesting and weird to me. Like this stuff seems to have really kicked up a notch since the iPhone 10 came out. That, like, everybody, and I guess maybe it's because there just isn't precedent for this. So, like, analysts are assuming based upon trends in the past that it cannot succeed because this has never happened before.
Yeah, and I think they look at it from the standpoint of the iPhone 10 was a risky move, right? I mean, it's a fundamental design change in the iPhone, which
an
is
expensive fundamental design change for
exactly.
For
so if you're kind of ballparking that and trying to figure it out what's going to happen as an analyst, probably the safe bet is that it might not do quite as well as it did in the past, especially once you start seeing these kind of reports. Maybe that's where it's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're fabricating what's coming out of the supply chain. Part of it is that they have limited knowledge, and they have, the point of view their information gives them. And so, like, I wouldn't want that job because I'm sure it's very difficult, but that's part of this deal. Or, like, if you have just two lines, you don't have a full picture. Now, on the other side of it, Tim Cook and Luca, like, they all have to tell the truth. Like, legally, they have to tell the truth on these calls. But
you can massage.
If they don't talk about the HomePod, then maybe no one will ask about it, right?
Yeah. Selective about it.
Now, the iPhone 10 selling more, they say that. I believe it because, again, legally, they have to tell the truth. But there's always, like, that friction, right, between people who want a story to be one way and want it to be another way. And it's always interesting to see that battle.
But yeah, great results again. The only weird part in the results right now is Max. But I mean, I guess the assumption is that will just level off over time again. But it is weird that for the last few quarters, the Macs have been declining. Like that, it seems like where iPads are now going up, Macs are now going down. These are not related. But it is, there's just been a shift where now the Macs are just declining ever so slightly year over year at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with the state of the hardware.
Yeah, that's definitely it, right? But it is interesting to see that it has been stable for so long, and now there's some slight slippage in it. But
yeah, I think if they work out the notebooks, then I think that'll recover.
That's what people want, right?
Yeah.
People want new notebooks, and if they can work that out, then I'm sure it will level.
So yeah, like you said, it's a good quarter. I think I, at least, coming into it, definitely thought or bought in that maybe this is the one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be bad.
It's like maybe this conversation is going to go different on Connected this week. But they're clearly doing well. like, part of me, too, like, I always struggle with this because I just don't care that much about it. Like, I'd much rather talk about...
I do, but I find it very interesting.
I want to talk about it this week, but after that, like, whatever.
Yeah, I find the units. The units is always what interests me.
Same.
Like, what is selling, what is not selling, where are the changes? Because for me, all of this stuff, it shows trends, and those trends can either inform Apple's thinking going forward, or the trends are informed by what they're doing. And so, like, when you look at the fact that there are less Macs sold or more iPads sold, you're like, okay, well, we can see why, because right now they are putting more effort into the iPad hardware than they are the Mac hardware.
Imagine if they could do everything
shows. Yeah, but
right.
So that's why I like the earnings stuff, because I like to see that what we're expecting will happen comes out in what's actually being sold, because so much time is spent going, like, with our opinions on what people in the real world are doing, right?
Sure.
Like, the average person, the average consumer, they're doing this, they're doing that. And this is where you see that. Because those iPads were not all sold to tech nerds because it's too many sold. So it's like, okay, so what's happening? Why is that's why I find this stuff
people are
interesting.
finally finding a reason to upgrade, or people
and like I know why people like they see the like, oh, we're going to talk about results, and they roll their eyes, think it's boring.
Well,
and I can
a bunch
see
of people
that.
skip this chapter.
But, yeah, their eyes glaze over, and I get it because it's a lot of numbers and it's a lot of like pie in the sky. But I do find something interesting in what the trends can tell us.
Yeah.
Okay, this episode is also brought to you by Storyworth, the easiest way to share your family stories. Storyworth makes it easy and enjoyable for your loved ones to share their life stories with weekly emailed story prompts and questions that you might not think to ask. Then at the end of the year, they'll get their stories bound into a beautiful hardcover book. It is sleek with a black and white interior, color cover, and up to 480 pages. This means that you and your loved ones can preserve the memories and even pass this book on to future generations. Here's how Storyworth works. You buy a subscription for someone important to you, and every week they will send an email with a question about prompting someone to talk about their life. Then the individual that's signed up for Storyworth or that you've purchased it for can email back with their story, with their thoughts or the things that they care about, or they can even record it over the phone, which is kind of cool. And I guess for people of different ages, this could be a great thing. And after a year, their stories are bound into a beautiful book to be kept and passed on. Storyworth is a great way to learn more about someone. The questions are designed to evoke entertaining, surprising, and moving responses. And Storyworth is also a great way of staying in touch with family members who maybe live a little further away than you'd like. With Storyworth, you can write stories and upload photos by email, on the web, or in their app. You can share the stories of as many people as you want. You just invite those individuals by email. You can save and edit everything on Storyworth.com, and all of your data is secure. Everything is private by default, and you get to control who sees the stories. Now, Stephen, I believe that you've been going through this with someone in your life, right?
I have. So I set this up with my dad. So he's getting the emails and they're asking him questions. And it's really interesting. Like I learned there was a question about his first job and how he worked at this hardware store. And he and I talked about that in person and like kind of just talking about him growing up. And I learned that his childhood home like burned down. I had no one was hurt or anything and it had to be rebuilt. But it's like, I read this because you see the answers, right?
Dad, didn't you think to mention this at some point?
It's like, I had no idea, and so it's really cool to be learning more about him because sometimes it can be hard to talk about this stuff where you just don't think about it. I would never have thought to ask my dad about his first job, but people at Storyworth did, and now I know he worked at this hardware store as a teenager. It's pretty cool.
If you're looking for a meaningful or maybe even a last-minute Mother's Day gift, Storyworth is perfect for someone that you care about, so now's the time to place your order. Listeners of this show can get $20 off their subscription by going to storyworth.com/connected. That's $20 off when you visit storyworth.com/connected. That's STORYWORTH.com/connected. Storyworth, a new way to bring the family together. Thank you to Storyworth for their support of this show.
I have some breaking news.
Okay.
Breaking news sound effect.
When you said earlier that you were thinking about a sound effect, was that your sound effect?
It's not
the
what
one
I was
that you
expecting.
just did?
No, but I'm just going to leave it in. There's a report by Barclays analyst Blaine Curtis. Mm-hmm. This is, you guys sitting down? I can see you. You're sitting down.
We are.
The 2018 iPhones may not include the lightning to headphone adapter in the box.
Get out of town.
Oh, no.
Get out of town.
I don't know.
Does anybody care?
Not really. I can't find mine in my house when I look for it. Anyway, I was coming on this trip and I was hunting around.
Got to keep one of those in your backpack. It was funny, like traveling here with a few friends, and they both had like their nice headphones with this little white thing just dangling off the end.
Right.
You just got to glue that thing on, man. Just glue it on, or like put some tape around it. Those things should be permanent. But anyway, yeah, of course it won't. You've got to stop it at some point. Like but
2 years
does
seems
it matter?
reasonable.
It doesn't matter anymore.
They're still going to sell in the Apple Store for $9.
Yeah.
They're going to sell that forever. They still sell the FaceTime app in the Mac App Store. Tim Cook can't stop selling anything except airports, I guess. Okay.
They sell the FaceTime app?
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
It's still in the Mac App Store for like snow leopard users.
You get a super drive. I think that's probably the oldest accessory available.
Yeah,
in the
because
store.
that came out in 2008.
I own a super drive.
So do I. I use
every
it
now and then.
I use it.
I say every now and then. One time I needed to burn a CD.
One time. I actually have two. I have one because our Mac Mini is our entertainment system, and like when you have kids, sometimes you watch DVDs, and so we use it pretty often. And then I have one in the office because then you got to burn CDs or make disk images of Mac OS 9 installers. You guys do that,
As
right?
you do, yeah.
You guys do that. Okay, so we're going to round out this week talking about marzipan? ? So this is an article over on Daring Fireball where Gruber talks about this rumored project again from Gurman. This idea that Apple is going to have some sort of way to bridge the gap between AppKit and UIKit for developers. And the idea was, and he says this, which I think is a really good point because I think I've been guilty of this, that when a rumor is fuzzy, you can just attach your dreams to it. It's like, John, you write an iOS app called Blink, which is awesome.
Right. Thank you.
I use it often, make affiliate links. And you could, with Marzipan, just magically hit a button and you have a Mac app poops out the other end, right? Like that's what people have glommed onto this.
It's really that easy, yes.
It's just a button. So he talks about that, but John seems to think a couple of things. One, that it is not its actual name. He seems to maybe know the name, or maybe know that Marzipan was an old name or something, and it's not what's being used.
But that's not important.
No, it's just interesting.
Right, but like no one, because it's not going to, Apple's not going to stand on stage and be like, welcome Marzipan. Like it's not.
Sure, yeah, I just find those little details.
Sure.
But then he says that he believes that this is going to be what is called a declarative control API. And I don't know what that means. And John, you're a developer.
Yeah.
Could you take a swing at it at least?
I'll take a swing at it. And I think, unfortunately, this is just as fuzzy a concept in some ways as Marzipan was when it was first rumored, because I think there's still a lot of people can interpret for themselves exactly what that means and can still attach a lot of their own hopes and dreams to it. But I think what John was getting at is that it's a little bit like HTML, because that's the example that he used. And what it would allow people to do, allow the developers to, on a higher, more abstract level, design the UIs for both Mac and iOS apps. So instead of having to learn two slightly different ways to go about creating buttons and windows and radio boxes and all those kind of things, tab controllers, you could just write them in kind of a simple language. Like with HTML, you just put tags and say, here's a paragraph.
And then the browser renders it the way the browser knows how to render it.
Exactly. And that's how this would work. So it would be a simplified, higher level, unified UI kind of thing.
Right. So you would say, like, put a button here, and then it would use whatever the UI kit would be on either. So it would show a button like how a button looks on iOS, or a button like how a button looks like on the Mac.
Yeah, as opposed to saying, okay, I want this button at this coordinate with these dimensions and this color and this this title on it. All those kind of details.
You do that twice, right? You do it once for iOS, one for them. Like that's how you would do it now. You would write both things independently.
Right.
But with this thing, you just say, like, I want a button here, and it will put a button there.
I think so. I think that's what he's getting at.
Okay. But this is obviously very tricky.
It is. And I think part of what I think John is getting at is that this is going to be a staged thing. And I think you guys have talked about this before in Connected. That this is probably the first step towards a longer-term project of modernizing the two platforms. And this is a way, it seems, to make life easier for developers to actually do the UI part, because it's already possible to use a lot of unified code across different apps, whether it's iOS or Mac. I was talking to James Thompson last night, and a lot of pCalc's guts, the actual calculations, that code is the same on iOS and the Mac, but he has to jump through a lot of hoops in order to create the UI for the Mac versus iOS.
Right.
Those are both very different for him, and that's where a lot of his work ends up being, and making it take time. Well, that's why he doesn't. That's why those two things don't get updated at the same time, because he works on one,
right,
and then he moves to the other.
Well, that and an ARKit game that's insane.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I see the benefit in that, right? That higher level gives them the ability to still play to app kits and UI kit strengths in other areas, and you can just learn this other thing that sort of rides on top of it.
But all of this is what it is. Like the implementation is whatever. But the most important detail, I think, the most interesting detail of John Gruber's article is that he says this will not be WWDC 2018.
Right.
This is WWDC 2019.
Yeah. For Mac OS 10.15, and what he says in a footnote, and I just love this style, a redesigned iOS 13.
Yes.
The new user interface. So, so that lends us to the question of what's at WWDC this year? Because it's going to be the Mac. It's not going to be the Mac Pro.
Nope. It'll be the Mac Mini.
It's an hour of Mac Mini updates.
So if we say, let's take this as read now. Let's assume that John Gruber knows what he's talking about, right? I think he has a pretty good track record. because he was tweeting about this and we were talking about it, and I was like, I said to you guys, I won't take this as him really believing it until he writes an article during Fireball, and then a couple of days later he did.
Right.
So like if he puts it on there, like he believes it. It's not just like talking about things that he thinks are going to happen on Twitter, which is like a whole different thing when just chatting with people. But like him writing something on his website, it's like, okay, like he knows the impact that's going to have when he writes that. Like everyone's going to take that as true. So he's going to be pretty sure of his sources at this point.
Right.
So all of the other rumors that we've seen, which again we will just assume them to be true for the time being, suggest that iOS 12 is going to be pretty chill.
11.5.
So we are all thinking, oh, well, it makes perfect sense that you would debut Marzipan because iOS and macOS are not going to get a lot this year. So what are they going to do then? What's the developer story?
You get a snow leopard. You get a snow leopard. You get a snow leopard.
But, like, that's fine.
I was expecting y'all to laugh at that.
Okay, sorry.
Laugh track.
But, like, that's fine from a user perspective, right? To be like that this is a maintenance release.
But it's not
But what are you telling your developers?
I mean, I think there's still room for other things. So if you don't have Marzipan and you don't have exciting new Mac professional hardware, even if iOS 12 and macOS 10.14 are smaller things, I think there's still room for improvements to things like ARKit, which I just don't care about. Like those like AR, we didn't even talk about. Like I just don't care. I think there's room for some stuff like on the iCloud, CloudKit, like Cloud.js stuff that they've started introducing. Like it's been a while since we've heard anything new about that. Like there could be stuff there. I think one thing Apple could do easily, I think they should do, is speak some more to user privacy and how to do things. Like Marco just did this with Overcast 4.2, whatever the new version of Overcast is, about having basically token accounts, so you're not using your email address. Like Apple could give developers more tools in those areas. That still counts as a quiet. I'm not saying they're going to do it. Like I have no basis for this. It's just been on my mind with GDPR and all this stuff that maybe it's an opportunity for Apple to like standardize some of that stuff for its developers. But like if you want to go this way, if you want to do more stuff, like if a user's log into iCloud and we kind of handle all that for you, like there's always room for that sort of stuff. So I think there can still be a developer story. There's got to be, because that's what the D in WWDC stands for.
Maybe a focus on the Apple Watch.
Yeah,
like, I think
that's possible.
Watch
could
OS
be,
could
like,
use some love.
It could be what people want, right? Like
what if
kill WatchKit, start.
What
over.
if they introduce apps for the Apple TV? That would be crazy.
Can you imagine if there was an app store that anybody cared about on an Apple TV? That'd be amazing.
I think,
right?
guys, I think the future of TV is apps.
I think
I
it
feel
is.
confident. I don't feel confident about that.
I think it's important, though, to keep in mind that when you go to WWDC, the keynote and the developer story are very different, right? I mean, the keynote is really for the whole world, and it's for consumers. And what I think we'll see for developers this year are those words we always see in the cloud that everybody always tries to screenshot and see all the little things, because those are the quality of life type features that make life easier for developers. Though that will still exist. I'm still perplexed, though, about what the real story is going to be, both for end users as well as just kind of the big picture.
I think at this point, Apple's responsibility to help developers make their apps better, and so by announcing new features every year, it gives developers something to sell to their customers. And if they don't have new features that can be taken advantage of by apps, then are Apple holding up their end of the bargain?
I mean, I don't think they're obligated to do that every year in big sweeping ways. I mean, if they did WWDC and it's, say if it's just core OS stuff, right? Like photo syncing does something like it's, consumer stuff. I don't know if that's necessarily like the worst thing in the world from a developer's perspective.
I'm not. My expectation level is now set to 2016,
pretty low,
which was stickers.
Oh yeah,
stickers. And
no, we got iMessage effects.
But like that, it was like the focus is there's some iMessage stuff.
Yeah,
like literally, the iPad was literally not mentioned. And it was very
I don't expect much
understated.
iPad stuff.
Very understated.
Are you expecting Eddie to dance on stage again?
And what if they redesigned Apple Music again?
They probably will. I mean, that That wasn't 16, though,
Wasn't
was
it? I thought it was 16.
I think
was
it
it
was-
17?
I
I
think
don't know.
that was 15.
I think it was 15,
Oh, it was 15,
and they
yeah.
redid it in 16, and everyone was calmer because they realized
Right,
the UI was
right,
Well,
right.
and also they had Bozoma St. John. Is that
Yeah.
is that her name? Yeah, they had her come on stage and do a much
She's
better
at
job in
Uber
16. She's at
now.
Uber now. Yeah.
Crazy. Okay, so yes, we'll see. I think we can all agree it'll be a quieter year, but we just have a few weeks left.
I'm horrified
A few weeks, yes.
about
A few
that
weeks.
at this point.
I think that does it for this time. John, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
John, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me at macstories.net, and I do a podcast with Federico called App Stories.
If you don't listen to App Stories, it's very good. So you guys just dive into the world of apps, the place where Mac Stories lives.
Exactly.
It's really good. I enjoy listening. If you want to find show notes this week, you can head over to the website relay.fm/connected/191.
It's a good website.
I got the number right this week.
Congratulations.
I'm really improving as a host. You can get in touch with us there as well. There's an email link, or you can find us on Twitter. Myke is at IMYKE, and Myke is the host of a bunch of great shows on relay.fm. Go to the website. If you like Connected, I promise you'll find something else that you will enjoy. You can find me on Twitter as ISMH, and I write 512pixels.net. And until next time, guys, say goodbye.
You're first, John.
Bye.
Cheerio.
Adios.